I used ChatGPT to program my Helix. How'd that go? Now with the rise of artificial intelligence and machine learning, so Microsoft Copilot, ChatGPT, Google Gemini, which is now at release 2.0, and then Apple's Intelligence, which is now incorporating ChatGPT. It's even easier to use artificial intelligence to make jobs easier for us, or to research a topic that we don't really understand to get potentially faster and better answers. But how does that go with programming something like an amp modeler like my Helix? Keeping it simple, I'm going to use my Yamaha BB734A. I'm going to keep it in passive mode so it doesn't have to worry about the 3-band EQ settings to confuse it, or to confuse me more likely. So I'll be in passive mode, so I'll have a tone control, but that's the only control on the bass itself. I'm going to allow it to recommend the pickup selection as part of the choice, as well as amps and effects to get those tones. Let's see how it goes. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is prompt or instruct the AI on what it's got to do and who it's got to be. Now this prompt will work on Copilot, ChatGPT, and Gemini. Depending on which one you use, you'll get varied results. In fact, if you put the same prompt into two of them, you'll get two different results, but the instructions will be followed the same way. And that's based on the models that are in the back of the thinking behind the AI platform itself. I'm using ChatGPT 4.0, the paid version, because then it won't time out or limit me to the number of things that I'm querying. The free version will still work the same. You just may have to do it in multiple goes depending on how far down you get. So the prompt basically starts with, take on a persona or be an expert in amplifier modeling with a specific knowledge around Line 6 Helix. Now if you're using a Tone Master Pro or a Quad Cortex, then change that to be what you think it should be. But in my case, I'm using Helix. I'm also telling it to be a seasoned bass player with deep expertise in crafting professional bass tones. So I don't want it to be a guitarist. I don't want it to be a drummer, for goodness sake. I want you to be a bass player to create bass tones. And I want you to create them for both live and studio recordings. So depending on what I want to ask it for, I may want to be specific and say just live, or create me a tone for the studio. It'll know about both. I've also told it that its purpose in life is to help me, or bassists, unlock the full potential of my gear by designing custom patches, optimizing the signal chain, and dialing in perfect tones for any genre. I've given it an expertise, so it's an expert in Line 6 Helix. I've told it to be a bass tone expert as well. And I've added a section around the instrument specifically, so I don't have to keep typing, please use this bass, please use this bass. Now I'm using my 734A. It's got a split P at the front. It's got a jazz pickup at the back, and I've told it I'm using Roto Sound round wound strings. So hopefully it takes that into consideration when it's giving me recommendations on the tone. So all I'm going to do basically is take this prompt, I'm going to copy it into a new chat and presenter. And let's see what it starts coming back with. All right, so it's now telling me what it's replaying back to me what I've told it to be. So it's saying it's going to be that expert. It's going to start with a few questions. So have I got a patch design I want? Is there a signal chain optimization I want to do, etc., etc. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say that I want to create a modern, punchy, clean tone. Include recommendations for pickup selection. All right, so let's see what that comes back with. Here's the overview it's given me. So it's recommending to get a nice clean sound. It's going to use a Rochester comp for a transparent punch. Now, I've done this a few times now, and it's remembered that I like the Rochester comp. The initial ones kept coming up with the LA Studio or the Dynacomp. So again, you'll get a potentially different outcome, but it'll be a compressor. Preamp, So it's recommending I put a preamp amp in, so the Aguilar or Cali 400, a 1x15 or a 4x10. It's putting an EQ in there. It's recommending I might add a chorus, some reverb, and a limiter. So let's start looking at the blocks as they break down. On my Helix platform, which is not connected, all right, I'm going to set that to guitar input. I've put a noise gate on, but that's it. And that's just through force of habit. So I'm going to add the compressor. Now I like to use the stereo compressors. So I'm going to use the, what's it saying? The Rochester Comp in stereo. Now it's saying threshold, ratio, attack, release, and level. So I don't have a gain, a knee, or a mix. So I'm going to go back and say the Rochester Comp includes controls for gain, threshold, ratio, attack, release, level, knee, and mix. Please recommend settings for these. Right, so it's now telling me I should set the gain, etc. And it's given me some reasons why those settings work. So part of the reason I like this is, even if I don't know what I'm doing, it's coming back and telling me the reasons why it's picked what it's doing. So I'm going to go with a gain of 5. I'm going to say threshold at -22. Now I'm not going to adjust any of these. I'm just going to take it as it tells me. The knee at 3. So it's saying a soft knee or smoother. So a 3 is going to give me a soft knee apparently. Having done this before, anywhere from 0 to 6 gives you the soft knee, and a mix of 90%. Just with the compressor, so off, I've got the P pickup selected only. If I put that compressor on, fairly subtle. Okay, so I'm liking that so far. All right, so now let's go back up and see what it told me to do for my amp. So it's saying to use the Cali 400. Now I don't like using that, so I'm going to go back and ask it. My amp preference is for the Ampeg SVT4 Pro. Can you adjust for this? Okay, so it's now saying SVT4, wow, just like I wanted. So SVT4 Pro. So gain, which is drive, bass, mid, treble. Okay. So again, there's a few things that are missing on here. This is the bit that takes a little bit of time because it hasn't recognized everything. It's a bit of a pain, right? Now the advantage is once you've done it once with this amp, it'll remember this amp, so those settings will come back every time you're looking for it. But the first time, because it hasn't remembered them, you've got to put them in. Okay, so now it's giving me everything. So drive, keep it clean, but add some harmonics. So 3, the bass is 2.5 because it adds warmth without mud. The mid's at 3 at 3. The mid frequency is at 800. Now I'm going to come back to that because that's not clear. I don't have an 800 here. Treble is at 1.5 because brightness and articulation. Okay. The master at 6. I'm going to adjust the channel volume depending on the volume of the block. Ultra low on because boost sub lows for depth, ultra high on, add sparkle and snap to the high end, and I'm going to leave the bright off but turn the EQ on. And the EQ settings, it's saying -3 dB, +2 to boost the low end thump, +1.5 to thicken the low mid punch, leave the 300 at flat, 600 add some growl, 900 leave that flat to keep the tone balanced, add 2.5 at the 2 kilohertz for sharpening articulation and string definition, 5 kilohertz we're going to add 1.5, and at 8 kilohertz we're going to -1 dB to tame those excessive highs apparently. We're going to adjust the compressor for this amp. So we're going to push the gain to 6. Because remember we've changed amp, so it's now recommending it change that. -24. Now the cab, it's suggesting an 8x10 classic amp head gate. So let's go and put the cab. I'll just use a single because it hasn't recommended a double. 8x10 SVT. Now it's saying a 1-to-1 ribbon, which we don't have. Okay, so let's talk about that. It's giving me alternate options of a 57 or a 4-to-1. So I want the more rounded low for fingerstyle playing. So I'm going to try the 4-to-1. I'm going to position it at 1.5 away at 0 degrees. I got a low cut at 40 and a high cut at 8 kilohertz. Now what I don't understand is the positioning. So I'm going to say the positioning ranges from center, which is 0, cap edge at 4, edge at 10. So just the compressor. If I add the amp, okay, now if I bring the cabinet in, so that sounds to me like it's fairly tight, fairly punchy, fairly clean. So what else is it telling me to do? Now it's recommending a EQ at the back end. And what's it got for pickup selection? So pickup selection, so I'm going to add I'm not going to worry the EQ. I don't often put it in, and that tone's sounding warm to me. So I'm going to leave that with the EQ from the Ampeg. Remember this post EQ was when we were using a Gummy & Kruger. It's saying fingerstyle use 65% neck and 35 bridge. So if I back that off to, that's 50-50, it's about 65 bridge and pickup, bridge and neck. If I go to 50-50, or if I back it to 70% bridge, that's not bad. I'll put that back to the P again. All right, now I did recommend potentially putting a chorus in there. So can you recommend a chorus effect to include? Now what I want to do is I'm going to put it between there and have it in effectively the effects loop. Modulation, again I'm going to use stereo. A Trinity chorus. Let's have a look at the Trinity chorus. So, all right, now this has got a few more things again than what it was suggesting. So again, I'm going to have to go and tell it what I'm going to use. Mix and level. All right, so again, it's recommended some of the settings, but it hasn't recommended all of the settings. So I've now had to go back and educate it on what I needed it to do. So again, so now it's giving me a rate of 2. The left depth of 3.5, center depth of 2.5. So that's giving me light modulation for stereo width and subtle movement in the core tone. And then another 3.5, which mirrors the left for balanced width. So this is going to give me a wider sound. The LFO preset is off to allow me to do manual control. So manual will be on. The left boost is off to keep it transparent. On the left channel, center boost is off to avoid overloading the core tone. The right boost is also off to keep the right side balanced with the left. I'm going to go with stereo to maximize the width, put the mix at about 30% and leave the levels there. Playing with it off, put it on should give me a wider sound. It's subtle, but you can slightly hear it's sounding a bit wider. If you've got stereo on, you should be able to hear it. Based on that, that's my clean tone. So as you can see, it's not necessarily a faster way to get results and not necessarily the results you were looking for. Now, it did come up with the results for those 3 things, but as you saw, not all the parameters for the amps, at least initially, were included when I asked it for those tone specifics. But what I did like about it was the recommendations it gave me on the amp to start with and the cab settings to start with, or when I asked it to change amps, cabs, effects, compressors, the reasoning that it gave behind why that was a good idea or a bad idea, I found that really useful. So again, whether you take it as prompted, the results, and then use them going forward, or whether you use it as a starting point to give you a starting line, especially if it's a genre that you're not familiar with, I think it's quite useful. Check out in the description below a link to the prompt that I used. Now you can adjust that prompt to be whatever you like, but I found this was really good to get started with. Also, check out these videos for some more information.